People that are on the field, they'll say, oh, well, I want leads that are 10 minutes from my house. Or they ask all the time. For people that don't know where we're at, Chowchilla.
Is this thing on?
Yeah. But we hear that all the time, right? And we've always been, we'll set the right expectation by telling them exactly what we expect. I've always told people, if you can't commit 40 to 50 hours a week, your chances of failure are much higher, right? You're probably not going to make it. And then if you're not willing to drive within an hour one way of home, this probably isn't the right career path for you.
Yeah, there's very few places where that's an exception. But look, like I said, I've had some good jobs before this, that like jobs that most people would retire from, right?
Yeah.
Like the Laborers was a great job. Wrigley's was a great company to work for. Both of those jobs, when I was in the Laborers, I worked in the Bay Area for 2 years. And then I worked in Corcoran for a year and a half after that. That's an hour and a half, 45 minutes away.
Were you staying in hotels or driving?
No, driving. I mean, in the Bay, sometimes I'd stay in a hotel, sometimes I'd drive.
But you're driving 2.5, 3 hours just to go to
just to go to work. You know what I mean?
One way.
One way.
Yeah.
When I worked for Wrigley's, it was like, well, you're going to work in San Jose and you're going to relocate. And I didn't have money to relocate, so I stayed in a hotel.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I covered the whole South, if you've never been to San Jose area. San Jose, Milpitas, Fremont, that's a long ways from Salinas, from Monterey.
Yeah.
I went over there because you make twice as much money. I didn't want to work in Fresno. It's not a knock on the Central Valley, but you get paid more in the Bay Area. Before I did that, when I was a kid, I worked for my buddy Eli's dad doing construction. That's really one of the first jobs I had. I did it for a long time. And I'd meet him at 4 a.m, drive to Monterey to work because we got paid twice as much.
Yeah.
I live in a town where you're not going to make much unless you're farming. You can work at Certainty. There's a few good jobs here in town, be a teacher or something like that, but those weren't really for me. And so I was just used to driving like that. That's something that's part of life.
Yeah.
And it still is. And
so how far do you drive when you're just out working the field? How many miles a day or month do you think you were driving?
I'd say probably 200 miles a day, at least. That's probably a good average because some days I would drive 120 miles. Some days I would drive 300 miles in a day.
Yeah.
I got to where when I was a little better, could afford it a little more. If I went to Bakersfield, which is 2.5 hours away, I'd get a hotel. I'd go to Palmdale, I'd get a hotel. But right at the beginning, like you asked the question, like how far would you drive? I was broke. I would drive anywhere you told me to drive. Here's a good story. Adam, when I first started in September, you guys had a condo up by Seattle Airport, by SeaTac, and there's a town called Tukwila. I got family that lives up there too, so I've always liked to go to Washington anyway. Well, you guys had all these leads up there, nobody to work them, and Adam did a contest. I think it was I started in September, so October was my first full month, December, January. It was January, so 3 months in, Adam did a contest. He was like, if you go out of town and work something like 100 leads. It was something like that in any of these designated states where you had a bunch of leads. If you wrote 15 grand, I think it was 15 grand, you give a $1,500 bonus. Well, I went up to Tukwila. I was like, well, I'm going to jump on that. So I drove up to Washington, stayed in that condo and worked 10 out of 11 days. I took one day, I went with my sister and my niece to a Mariners game, but I worked 10 out of 11 days, full days. I wrote 22 grand off of 74 leads. And I called Adam up and I was like, hey dude, do I just got to take 26 more leads so I win the bonus? And you're like, no, you're good. Yeah. And he cashed me out $1,500 when I got back. And most of that business was like rollover for February. And I ended up being the #1 agent. I know it was all a Golden Memorial. It may have been for all of Lincoln because you guys were on that trip to Canada.
Okay.
When the numbers came out. And I might have been #1 for all of Lincoln, but that was like 4 months in. It's like I can either spend every day driving to Bakersfield here 2 hours away, or I can go up there to a condo, work all day, drive 20 minutes back to my condo and write as much business as I can. And to me, the answer to that question is, where would you go? I'll go anywhere. Like wherever the leads are, I'll go there. I still will.
It's money, dude. That's money.
I've worked in Washington, Hawaii, Alaska, Nevada, Oregon, anywhere.